Technical issues. We just need some new equipment. How have you been, Ken?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good. So far.
carousel of the roller coaster. And you hear those clickers, that loud sound, and it's really violent metal.
I called Stephanie, she's sending one over. Which one did we use last time?
That's the one that I had. That's the one that Scott's working on.
Right.
We got both the HDMI cord.
And it's not? What is it?
That's the jury one, but that was.
Yeah, the jury one doesn't work. You can't have anything on it because it goes to the jury just for them to play things.
a question when it does steps that use the password, the password should be on here. This is the yours, link hasn't come yet, so you told me to write this down.
Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for the delay. We wanted to make sure you had the visual because I know that helps you when you do your reporting. I'm here today with Chief Dan O'Shea, Rockford Police Department, along with Deputy State's Attorney to my right, Brenda Quaddy, Chief of Staff to my left, Mike Rock. I'm here today to announce charges against 9 individuals for offenses ranging from delivery of controlled substance, unlawful use of weapon, drug-induced homicide, to first-degree murder. The first individual that I'm announcing charges against is Tereus L Barnett, date of birth August 4th, 1984, for the murder of Jamie L. Rogers, age 16. On June 14, 2017, at 7:49 a.m., the Rockford Police Department responded to the area of 936 Kent Street. Upon arrival, the officers found an unidentified teenager laying behind 928 Kent Street. The victim appeared to be deceased. An autopsy determined that Jamie L. Rogers died as a result of a gunshot wound to his head. During the investigation, Tereus L Barnett was developed as a suspect. The case was reviewed by my office, and currently my office has filed first-degree murder charges against Tereus L Barnett. He faces, if he is convicted, a penalty range of 45 years to natural life. He is also charged with unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, a Class 3 felony, punishable by 2 to 5 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections and 1 year a mandatory supervised release. A warrant has been issued for his arrest in the amount of $1 million. Mr. Barnett is currently in custody in Dade County, Miami, Florida, on unrelated charges. He will be extradited to Illinois to face these charges. The charges are merely allegations, and the defendant is presumed innocent until or unless proven guilty in a court of law. The next individual, Juvia Goldsmith, date of birth April 21st, 1998. She currently is facing a 3-count criminal complaint for the death of Timothy Stearns, age 31, that occurred on December 23rd, 2019. On December 23rd, 2019, police officers with the Rockford Police Department as well as the Rockford Fire Department were dispatched to the alley behind 1714 16th Avenue. Upon arrival, they found an adult white male who was non-responsive, and he was later pronounced deceased. An autopsy conducted determined that the cause of death was the adverse effects of fentanyl and acetylfentanyl. An investigation into his death was conducted by the Rockford Police Department, and during that investigation, Juvia Goldsmith was developed as a suspect. She currently is charged with drug-induced homicide, a Class X felony that carries 6 to 30 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections with 3 years of mandatory supervised release. She is also charged with delivery of a controlled substance, a Class 1 felony that carries 4 to 15 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections with 1 year mandatory supervised release. She is also charged with concealment of a homicidal death, a Class 3 felony with a sentencing range of 2 to 5 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. She is scheduled to appear in front of the Honorable Jennifer Clifford in courtroom 467 on September 24th, 2020 at 9 a.m. in the Winnebago County Criminal Justice Center on unrelated charges. A warrant has also been issued for her arrest with a bond of $1 million. The next individual is Michael A. Lafleur, date of birth December 11, 1987. He faces a 4-count criminal complaint for the death of Kaja Threadgill, age 28, that occurred on April 3, 2019. On April 3, 2019, at approximately 2:52 a.m., Rockford police officers and the Rockford Fire Department were dispatched to 302 Forest Avenue in reference to a drug overdose. Upon arrival, an unresponsive adult female was located and transported to the hospital, where she was later pronounced deceased. An autopsy was conducted, and the cause of death was determined to be the adverse effects of cocaine and fentanyl. An investigation was conducted, and Michael Lafleur was developed as a suspect. He faces drug-induced homicide, Class X felony, penalty 6 to 30 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections with a mandatory supervised release of 3 years. He also faces delivery of a controlled substance, which is a Class 1 felony, penalty range 4 to 15 years, mandatory supervised release period of 2 years. He is scheduled to appear in front of the Honorable Judge Jennifer Clifford in courtroom 467 on July 15th at 9 a.m. in the Winnebago County Criminal Justice Center on an unrelated matter. A warrant has been issued for his arrest in the amount of $500,000. The charges against the defendant are merely allegations, and the defendant is presumed innocent until or unless found guilty in a court of law. The next individual, Demetrius M. Shivers, date of birth December 16, 1994. He is facing an 8-count criminal complaint for first-degree murder and unlawful use of a weapon by a felon for the murder of Philip Dean Trammell, age 24. On May 3, 2020, Rockford police officers responded to a shot spotter alert in the area of the 1400 block of West Jefferson Street. Upon arrival, they found a male victim lying in the street suffering from a gunshot wound. The victim was later identified as Philip Dean Trammell. An autopsy was conducted and determined that Philip Trammell died as a result of his injuries. During the investigation, Demetrius Shivers was developed as a suspect. The case was reviewed by my office, and he faces the following charges. First-degree murder, that is punishable by a minimum of 45 to natural life in the Illinois Department of Corrections. Unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, which is a Class 3 felony, punishable by 2 to 5 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, followed by 1 year of mandatory supervised release. The defendant is scheduled to appear in front of the Honorable Judge Philip Nicolosi on July 23rd at 11 a.m. in courtroom C on an unrelated matter. These charges are merely allegations, and the defendant is presumed innocent until or unless proven guilty in a court of law. There has been a warrant lodged against the defendant with the bond amount of $1 million. The following individual, Melissa Blake, date of birth December 21st, 1992, is facing a 1-count criminal complaint for aggravated unlawful use of a weapon. On May 3rd, 2020, Rockford police officers responded to a shot spotter alert in the area of the 1400 block of West Jefferson Street. Upon arrival to the area, officers located a weapon inside a vehicle. During the investigation, Melissa Blake was developed as a suspect. After reviewing the case, she faces charges of aggravated unlawful use of a weapon, Class 4 felony, that is punishable by 1 to 3 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, followed by 1 year mandatory supervised release. A warrant has been issued for her arrest in the amount of $50,000. These charges are merely allegations, and the defendant is presumed innocent until or unless proven guilty in a court of law. Darrien Gulley, date of birth June 26, 1992. He faces 1 count of unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, Class 2 felony. A warrant has been issued for his arrest, bond amount of $250,000. On May 23, 2020, Rockford police responded to a shot spotter alert in the 1400 block of West Jefferson Street. Upon arrival, officers located Darrien Gulley in possession of a firearm. During the investigation, Darrien Gulley, the case was reviewed after the investigation by the Winnebago County State's Attorney's Office. Unlawful use of a weapon is a Class 2 felony, punishable by a sentence of 3 to 14 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, followed by 1 year mandatory supervised release. These charges are merely allegations, and the defendant is presumed innocent until or unless proven guilty in a court of law. Orintho Hurd, date of birth May 18, 1995. On May 3, 2020, the Rockford police responded to a shot spotter alert in the area of the 1400 block of West Jefferson Street. Upon arrival to the area, officers located Orintho Hurd in possession of a firearm. During the investigation, the officers conducted an investigation, and the case was reviewed by my office. Unlawful use of a weapon by a felon is a Class 2 felony. It is punishable by 3 to 7 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, followed by 1 year of mandatory supervised release. A warrant has been issued for Orintho Hurd in the amount of $100,000. These charges are merely allegations, and the defendant is presumed innocent until or unless proven guilty in a court of law. Darius Coleman, date of birth June 13, 1993. He faces a 2-count criminal complaint for armed habitual criminal and unlawful use of a weapon by a felon. On May 3, 2020, Rockford police officers responded to a shot spotter alert in the area of the 1400 block of West Jefferson Street. Upon arrival, the officers located Darius Coleman in possession of a firearm. The case was reviewed by the Winnebago County State's Attorney's Office, and Darius Harris is currently charged with armed habitual criminal, a Class X felony, that is punishable by 6 to 30 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, followed by 2 years of mandatory supervised release. Unlawful use of a weapon by a felon is a Class 3 felony, punishable by 2 to 5 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, followed by 1 year mandatory supervised release. A warrant has been issued for Darius Coleman in the amount of $500,000. These charges are merely allegations, and the defendant is presumed innocent until or unless proven guilty in a court of law. Rayshawn Montgomery, date of birth August 29, 1993. On May 3, 2020, the Rockford police responded to a shot spotter alert in the area of the 1400 block of West Jefferson Street. Upon arrival to the area, officers located Rayshawn Montgomery, who was later found to be in possession of a firearm in that area. He currently faces unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, which is a Class 2 felony that is punishable by 3 to 14 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, followed by 2 years mandatory supervised release. A warrant has been issued for his arrest in the amount of $100,000. These charges are merely allegations, and the defendant is presumed innocent until or unless proven guilty in a court of law. So these charges that I have announced today against these 9 individuals are a reminder to everyone in the community that gun violence and drug violence continues to be the visible pandemic in our community. Chief O'Shea and the Rockford Police Department have worked with tenacity in investigating not just these cases that you heard about today that have resulted in charges, but also the other cases that are still open investigations. We continue to work to try to get justice for these families. And my condolences go out to all of these families who have lost loved ones this year, whether it's gun violence or drug violence. And we have a lot of families that have lost loved ones this year. Some of these investigations remain open. Some of them, you heard the charges were filed today. And I'm hopeful that with the announcement of charges regarding some of these murder cases for this year, that we will get people in the community to come forward and help law enforcement solve these cases. And I want to read to you the names of those who have been murdered this year, because they are real and were real individuals. They were loved by their family members, and they are lost to us forever. Our first murder victim of the year was Trayvon Lord. He was only 22 years old. Shortly after that, we had Antonio Warren, age 15. David Foley. Philip Trammell. Today, I announced charges regarding Philip's death. Clifton Totten. Stephen DeLorme. Larry Brown, Cameron Dunlap, Malik Patel, Sherman Wilkes, and most recently, Jamiris Reed, age 23, over the holiday weekend. We cannot become desensitized to the loss of young life in our community. These individuals that we've lost with the age range from 16 to 31, when they should be enjoying their life, and their lives have been taken. And for those who are facing charges or might be facing charges, their future is dim as well. And so my message today is I want everyone in the community to remember the lives that have been lost to violence so that we can put an end to it. We need to find a better way to solve our disagreements other than shooting and killing each other. Killing our youth in our community can never be acceptable. But the change can only come when we as a community collectively work with law enforcement to bring the change. We need to all be a part of helping law enforcement keep our community safe. And I'm asking everyone in the community to join me in that effort in helping keep our community safe. We can do this. At this time, I'd like to have Chief O'Shea step up and say a few words. And again, I want to thank the Rockford Police Department for their hard work and bringing the cases to my office for review during a thorough investigation of these matters so that we could announce these charges today so that we can move toward some resolution for these families who have lost their loved ones to violence.
So good afternoon. First, I'll start with 2017, the homicide from that year. Thank the public, obviously, for helping us out as they've been doing more and more. And then the officers and the detectives that have been nonstop working on it. Great work as always. They continue to amaze me. The drug-induced homicide charges, you know, overdoses and heroin and fentanyl and coke continue to be a big problem in the city of Rockford. And it's kind of plaguing the city, it's plaguing the county area. The people that are peddling the poison, if you will, as soon as we can track them back down like we're doing in these cases, they're going to get charged, and hopefully when they're convicted they can go to prison. And we just got to get people to stop selling the drugs. And I'll make special mention of the Philip Trammell murder on Jefferson. You know, the officers responding to that, there was a lot of people out there, and the officers, I don't want to say they had to fight their way, but they had to get through a crowd that did not want them to get and render aid to someone who had been shot. The officers were trying to get to that person, Mr. Trammell. And there was a gathering of people, particularly around there, that did not want the officers or the paramedics to get to Mr. Trammell. The officers are doing that, while they've got multiple shots being fired and rounds being tossed off, and they know people got guns there, and they're still worrying about trying to get to a victim. That speaks accolades to the cops that are responding. They got a lot of people in the street, they got gunfire going off, they got a victim they're trying to get to, they're trying to assist the fire department to get to the victim. Beyond accolades to the cops that responded that day. It was amazing. The detectives working it, and then I'll throw a special shout out to the people that live in the area. A lot of people that live in the area cooperated and helped out the police, and without them, we certainly can't do our job as well or as quickly. So the residents who are in the area as well, who are tired of the gunfire, big shout out to them as well. We'll keep working on the other murders that are still uncharged and unsolved from this year and past years. So more work to be done, more work to come. And again, as always, the plea to the community, please continue to call us, please continue to give us information, and let's try to keep working forward, making Rockford safer. Thanks.
This time, we would be happy to entertain any questions that we were able to ask, keeping in mind, as I always like to remind the press, regarding Rules 3.6 of the Illinois Professional Code and Rule 3.8, Rule 3.6 specifically prohibits extrajudicial comments that pose a serious and imminent threat of prejudicing an adjudicatory proceeding. In the context of a criminal prosecution, a prosecutor's extrajudicial statements can create the additional problem of increasing public condemnation of the accused. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
So the charge against Shivers and then like everybody else, Blake and all of the others on West Jefferson, was that all at the same incident, or?
Yes, it was.
Okay, the Trammell murder in May of 2020 on West Jefferson Street.
Yes, the murder of
6
Mr.
people.
Trammell resulted in multiple arrests for criminal activity in that area on May 3rd, in addition to the murder of Philip Trammell.
Okay.
And you listed the names, but how many individuals have been murdered this year so far?
11, the last being 4th of July, Jamiris Reed.
I have a quick question for Shay. So have you seen a decrease at all in gun violence since the task force to get guns off the streets has started?
No, 2020, we've actually seen an increase. Roughly since March, we've seen an increase in shots fired and violent crimes and aggravated batteries committed by handguns. For the last 3 years, we've been going down, and as I've released the stats every month this year, we've said it previously, we're seeing violent crime, specifically gun crime, particularly gun crime, going up. And the amount of guns we're taking off the street is going up as well exponentially. And that's a huge concern. They just announced the state of Illinois, I don't know if we were first, second, or third in the country for gun sales, legal gun sales, which are fine as long as people lock them up and they don't become victims of burglary and theft, and then those guns end up on the street in illegal hands. So no, we're going the wrong way with violent crime and shootings this year, and we're trying everything we can. Again, can't do it with 300 cops. It takes the 147,000 people who live here to work with us.
Chief, describe the satisfaction of solving a homicide that's 3 years old.
You know, about the same satisfaction as the one we solved 24 hours ago. If we can solve any of the murders, it gives tremendous satisfaction not only to the officers, more importantly to the family members, the person that was killed. The amount of pain and anguish that they have to go through. So for them and their friends and their relatives, I'm sure they feel a lot more, I don't want to say satisfaction, that's the wrong word. They certainly feel a sense of relief because they've been bearing that for 3 years. And you know, we wish we could solve every one within 5 minutes. Quite honestly, I wish we didn't have any more for the rest of the year. That would be great. But for us, it's just, it's another family, it's another person that's been killed, and family and friends, and then the officers will stop nonstop. They will work everything they can to get resolution for that case.
Chief, not in relation to these, but obviously a busy day for you so far. Is there any reaction for you?
I'm not commenting on anything from previous today.
with the gun violence increasing, is there anything new or anything planned that the police will be doing to try to get guns off the street?
Yeah, we have a lot of plans, not just Rockford PD, but the county, the state, and the federal agencies as well. Continue to work on cases and continue to use every investigative mean possible to us. I'm often asked what all those means are. We don't go into those, but we will utilize everything and anything we can to go after the perpetrators, the gun runners, the gun sellers, the gun shooting, the gun users, if you will. We'll throw everything we can at them.
Talk a little bit about the people that you're going after today. Some people have some pretty steep charges, a couple of first-degree murders.
Sure. I mean, we're not going after these. These are charges that are placed by the state's attorney's office. All we do is build the case facts and evidence. Every time there's a crime, we do the case facts evidence build-up, and then we take everything we have, give it to the state's attorney's office, and State's Attorney Hite Ross herself in the real important cases, and then any of the other state's attorneys, ASA Quade, Rock, will decide what charges, if any, are appropriate in any case, and then we charge accordingly. So we just do the investigative and the build-up, and then everything past that, the state's attorney's office decides what's appropriate. Okay, thank you.
I am reminded that there was a name that I left off the list, and that just goes to show how many we've had. And that is Jadale Lehman, was also a victim of murder in Rockford this year. And let me just follow up with what the chief said. So it's very clear the way the process works. The police do the investigation. My office is tasked with charging those individuals. And we do that based upon the evidence that the police bring to us. If there is evidence to charge, then we charge. If there's more work to do, the police continue to do that work. And so with respect to the 2017 case, that's an example of the police continuing to do the work, continuing to be vigilant with individuals that are willing to come forward and help us, because we cannot do it without the community's help. And hopefully, when we are able to charge a case that's 3 years old or more, that gives those other families hope that their loved one's case may also be charged. And I want to assure the community that those cases are always alive in my office. You know, there's no such thing as a cold case. We may not have had recent evidence on the case, but the case is not cold, and your loved ones are never forgotten. And I, along with law enforcement, continue to work to bring individuals to justice who have taken your loved ones. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Apologize for the technical difficulties.